Good evening, everyone. This is Divye Mahajan. I am the founder and the director of Ennobler Private Limited. It's a mind handling solution company, and we present you today's a very interesting topic, that is wisdom from myths in this pandemic times. And we have a very humble soul, Mr. Utkarsh Patel sir, with us. He is a corporate professional turned mythologist and the author of the books in the genre of the mythological fiction. He is also the lecturer of comparative mythology at the University of Jammu and has qualifications in mythology both Indian and world from the Mumbai University. He is also a TEDx speaker, and along with that he regularly conducts workshops on various mythologies of the world like Greek, Mesopotamian, and besides workshop on the epics of India, namely Ramayana and its myriad versions. We welcome you, sir, on board with us, and it is pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Just a slight correction. I teach comparative mythology at the Mumbai University, not Jammu.
Okay.
It's Mumbai University.
Yeah, Mumbai University. I really apologize for that. Okay. So, sir, as we all know that nature has a power to heal, and we explicitly see in the stories of mythology, right? That is sung in every single corner of the culture of our country. Mythology speaks about the more scientific ways of living. So living that is mostly aligned with nature, right? So how do you find nature giving cure of pandemics in the enriching stories of mythology?
It's important to understand first what is mythology. We often, there are a lot of misconceptions about mythology. So before I begin, mythology is a set of stories. A set of stories which were told to us, ages back. And they were not told for some kind of an entertainment for people. They were told to basically solve certain issues. When people are trying to grapple with certain things, that's when these stories must have come up. And because these stories were firmly believed in, when they were told and by the people who told them, these stories have kind of continued for a very long time. And that's where it's in the realm of what I call wisdom. It's very important to understand that the present day word myth means lies. And often people mix myth as lies with myth as stories. So stories means lies. No, we don't look at myth as lies. Myth is not equal to lies. Myth is equal to very, very ancient wisdom, very, very important set of stories which have been handed over to people from generations. With this background, that's what I understand as myths, and that's what I call the study of these myths as mythology. So myths, have this strong way of enrich. These are very strong stories which make us aware of life and, our surroundings the way they are. Often they help us acknowledge the present as it is and how it ought. So that is a very big difference we need to understand. And ancient times have also seen epidemics which have eliminated thousands and lakhs of people. The present epidemic, when we look at it in the way it is unraveling every now and then, seems to be no different. So this pandemic has a huge, completely humbling effect on mankind. Modern man who thinks we know everything. And that's what has happened. So man has to face the onslaught of nature, which, because man seldom respects nature. That's very important. We don't respect nature. We want to control nature. We want to explore everything and control it. And in that process, it gives rise to these problems. So pandemic, landslides, massive floods are nature's way of pointing somewhere that man has gone wrong, or that certain things are not happening in a very natural way. And it is also something, sometimes it realizes, that things are beyond man and beyond science also. Absolutely. So, for example, take the flood myths. Flood myths are a case in point. Incurable diseases, devastating floods, which are supposed to have wiped out mankind completely, which have left only heaps and heaps of dead people. Battles which have left only heaps of dead bodies with nothing left for us. And the winner also takes nothing home. These are nature's way, of telling humans that, look, you can do what you want to, but you still cannot control. And I think this pandemic is a hugely humbling event on man. When you look in the past and you realize that man actually has not learned any lessons. That's the way I look at this pandemic.
Probably, sir, I feel that it turned out to be a myth, a lie. And as time passes towards our future, we tend to forget up things that has happened to us. Just the way the moment, a wave comes, everybody is like they have to be inside, and the moment everything starts settling down, everyone moves out and then another waves come. So
I completely agree.
We are not learning. We are not trying to, imbibe up things that, situation is not that same again.
True, absolutely.
Of course we want to express ourselves. Of course we want to move out. That's the right of a human being. But looking into the fact how situations are, we do have that knack to forget things.
Forget things, yes. And challenge. We tend to challenge a bit too much. Except that this is not a situation where you should challenge. You should lie low.
Absolutely.
I think it should lie low and accept the things the way they are, which we are not doing.
Absolutely. So as we go forward, sir, how exactly is the learning from mythology helps to prepare better for the future threats and livelihood?
See, one must understand the very objective of myths, and mythology. So myths have served many purposes. For example, it could answer man's, very basic existentialist questions. Who am I? Where have I come from? What is my identity? What happens to me after death? And sometimes they're also focused on very cosmological aspects, like where did the world come from? Where did the sun come from? So on and so forth. So often these questions is what myths have answered for us. But there is still something that it can teach us, and how to live a human life under any circumstances. See, we are all used to a different kind of circumstances. We're all very happy. And then suddenly the pandemic came and, shook us out by saying, this is not how you live.
Absolutely.
Now, for the last 1.5 years, we were living in a very, very different kind of a condition. Also, these kind of stories help us cope with tragedies and troubles that we might come across. So, myths have a very interesting way of, how to overcome stress and depressing moments. And let me give you a very brief example in the form of a story here. That, in Mahabharata, there is a stage, when Yudhishthir is out for his exile, the 13-year exile. He's lost his land, he's lost everything, and he's suffering an extreme self-pity. And he just can't reconcile with what he has done, how he gambled his land away, how he gambled his brothers away, how he gambled his wife away, everything. And he's feeling pitiable. Around that time, when they were in exile, Rishi Bhardwaj comes to meet the Pandavas, and in this extreme moment of self-pity, Yudhishthir asks the sage, is there anybody worse than me? Is there anybody more unlucky than me? I have followed dharma all my life, but look at my condition. Today I am out without land, literally begging, and lost everything. That's when Rishi Bhardwaj tells him a story, and he tells him the story of, the very famous story that many of us know, the story of Nal and Damayanti. In this story too, Nal has a weakness for gambling, dice, and he gets into it, and somehow, he loses his land. And he also sees that at one stage, Nal is separated from his wife also. So both of them endure a lot of trouble separately. They lose their forms, they lose their looks. Nal becomes ugly. And the Rishi concludes, telling Yudhishthir that you are far better off than Nal. You at least have your family with you. You at least have your brothers and your wife with you. So you see, look at this example. In these moments of self-doubt and self-pity, that many of the myths, come to help us. Despite everything, the world is worth living. We are all going through a bad time. Why me? Why has my relative gone sick? Why is it that, my parents are, let's say in Delhi or in Gujarat, and I'm unable to go and see them even when they are in such a terrible condition? And then we feel guilty. Then we feel, we start crucifying ourselves by saying, this is what I'm doing. And I think these myths, these stories, through these wonderful tales, we recognize the positive values in what appears to be negative moments of our life. And so, that's the beauty of myths. I mean, can they help us? Of course, they are helping us. Can we say that, life is useless because it ends in the grave anyway? But we don't stop living, right? And if it was this case, then our mythological heroes would not strive to, achieve the fame that they've achieved. Be it the Pandavas, be it Krishna, be it Jesus, Moses. everybody has suffered during their lives, leaving behind a path for us to understand that between birth and death, you will have to undergo or endure some kind of a problem. No matter what the crisis, man makes mistakes, learns from them. And if he doesn't, then frankly, we wasted an entire life. And I think there lies the difference.
Absolutely.
Some lives are remembered and some are not remembered. So in times of these, who do we remember? We remember the likes of Buddha, his journey. We remember the likes of Krishna. We don't remember the Kauravas or the devil's lifetime and say, what do we learn from them? No.
Absolutely.
So yes, there is so much to learn from these, myths that we have. Ancient, and that's why we call it ancient wisdom. They're not stories, this wisdom.
Sir, I am very fascinated with the life of Rama. So Lord Rama has such a sacrificing life that he sacrificed his everything for the sake of the word of a mother and a father. So for me, it is something that touches my heart beyond anything. So whenever a challenge comes to my life, I see people, when the similar challenges coming in their life, they get, they get an anxiety attacks on that. And I feel personally that when such kind of challenges have come in my life, they have enriched my life in such a way that I have become a more wise person. So it totally depends upon how we look up to and whom we are looking up to. Whether we talk about the characters or the deities of our own religion or the deities of someone like other religions. It hardly matters. It hardly matters because every single life that has become, superhuman have always gone through a suffering, and they have learned how to move beyond that suffering. So that is exactly what we have to learn as a human race. Not consider everything as a suffering and consider it as something which is a passing by event. Not as something which is happening to us, but something which is passing by towards the future time, right? So as we go forward, there would be some more deities or vibrations in other religion as well, right? For which we say that that contribute to the diseases that they have spread to the humanity. So what mythology speaks about it?
See, from the very beginning of time, from even before time started, that's when we say the myths have started.
Yeah.
Any sudden tragedy which has not been understood or which has not been comprehended has always been seen as God's decision. Somewhere God is punishing people in any country, in any culture. It is immaterial of which culture it is. So epidemics in the days of the past, when there was no understanding of, how to cure or how to solve this problem, was always seen as some kind of God's justice. God is doing something. Gods might be angry with the way things have shaped up. Maybe man is not living his life properly. So be it plagues or various pestilences, if you look at the myths of the world, you will find gods and deities of pestilence. For example, Sitla Mata in Indian myths, or Hariti Devi in the Buddhist, a Buddhist deity, right, who protects children from smallpox. And we even have minor deities in the Sundarban area, like the Ola Bibi or the Ola Chandi, which you will be surprised to know are worshipped by all communities. Not just the Hindus or not just everybody worships them. This shows that these are such important deities, and these were venerated, as I said, by all communities. And these were the deities who people believed that they protected you from cholera. Way back in the 19th century, smallpox accounted for nearly several million deaths. So time and again, when somebody is not understood what this is, what this pestilence is, what this disease is, we have created a deity to take care of it. So, be it smallpox. Not only that, if you look at the Greek mythology, when, women used to die a lot during childbirth, they had a goddess by the name of Eleuthia, who was the goddess of childbirth and midwifery. Very clearly, this goddess was kind of invoked or, brought in because people didn't know why women died during childbirth or how they could not save people. So epidemics, pandemics, everything, they all have a way of, and mythology is looked at it in a manner whereby in common people felt that this is some kind of God's justice. And that's why we end up worshipping. Even in Mesopotamia, there are gods, deities, in Mesopotamia, which were deities for you worship when there's a plague. You worship when there is excessive rain. You worship when there is a drought-like situation. So all these have been seen as kind of pandemics, which man cannot control. That's when you resort to God. And on a very lighter vein, we even have a Corona Devi out here in India nowadays, right?
Yes.
So it's not changed much. That's why I said, we learn so much from our myths. And world over, there are these kind of gods and deities and goddesses.
Very well said, sir. And there is always, secrecy to the disease that comes through the times. Like we have still not able to gauge what COVID is all about because it's changing so rapidly. So we of course take up something that is more higher than the disease and put it as a, as a brace to us so that it protects humanity from getting into the trap of that disease. Probably it's a quote that is placed both by the divine. The divine places the disease and divine puts the faith in a human being to to consider something higher as a cure instead of considering himself as somebody empowering the human race. Because we over a period of time have believed that we are more powerful than anything in this world. And because of that we have ruined the entire earth. If you just look around, it used to be a flora and fauna. And human beings used to be considered as part of it. But unfortunately, we have depleted all our resources and we are now doing business on it. So probably that's the reason to teach humanity a lesson. It has come in a very unique way. And probably it has been coming through the very unique way in the history of the entire world. So sir, how do you see every story has a secret element to it? So would you like to tell our viewers any particular story that is more symbolic and gives us an interpretation which is beyond the characters?
Okay, let me give you very briefly. This is a story from a very different culture altogether. And this is an interesting story of a story called the myth of Ceridwen and Gwion. Very briefly, I'll tell you the story. So Ceridwen was a goddess of knowledge, and she had a son who was not very good looking. So she was worried that my son won't do anything well in life. So she decided that my son might as well become very knowledgeable. So what she did was that she created a huge cauldron with all the knowledge, and it had to be brewed for a year. So she put a servant called Gwion and said, you look after this. You look after this. At the end of the period of 1 year, there'll be something that will come out that my son will be having it. So Gwion very easily, entire year, he took care of it. He kept on brewing it. Just at the end of the year, some 2 or 3 drops suddenly spurt out from the cauldron and fell on his hand. And by next, it burned, right? Because it's been burning for a year. He put it in his mouth. And that was all that was produced in 1 year. And Gwion becomes all the knowledge. He got all the knowledge of the world, which was reserved for Ceridwen's son. Absolutely. Ceridwen gets very angry, and she now wants to kill Gwion. And so, she starts chasing. When she starts chasing, Gwion doesn't know what to do. So he takes the form of a bird and he flies. Immediately, Ceridwen, who's the goddess, she takes off a bigger bird and starts chasing. When Gwion doesn't know what to do, he jumps inside the water. He takes the small of a small fish, but Gwion takes the form of a big fish. Then again, they chase each other. Then Gwion comes out on earth, takes the form of a rabbit and starts running really fast. But Ceridwen takes the form of a bigger animal and starts chasing. At the end of it, when Ceridwen Gwion doesn't know what to do, he takes the form of a small corn, a small piece of corn, and hides. The lady, the goddess, took the form of a rooster, a hen rather, and found that corn and ate it. And then she became a normal goddess. But that's when she realized that she is now pregnant. With the corn had become a fetus inside. So she decided, when the baby comes out, I'm going to kill this child. Okay. But when the child came out, the child was so beautiful that he couldn't kill it. And the story goes on. But let me tell you, what do we understand from it? The first and a very interesting thing is, the one who works for the knowledge is the one who achieves it. I can't work for you and hand over knowledge to you in a platter, which is what Gwion worked for it for the entire year. He was bound to it. If you look at the journey of this Gwion flying in the air, getting in the water and running, is nothing but what knowledge does to you. Absolutely. Knowledge gives you all the wings which you can, whereby we say we can fly, we can swim, we can run. Transformation is the essence of the story, that knowledge can transform. And Gwion's transformation in earth, in water, in sky, is nothing except what knowledge can do to you. And that's the beauty of this whole beautiful story. It's a big story, so I'm just trying to sort of wrap it up in a short form. But that's, and when you read the story, you're wondering what is it. But when you read between the lines, is when you realize that it's such a beautiful story with such heavy inner meaning in it.
And that is what is required in our personal life as well, sir. Whether we talk about the corporate wellness or the personal wellness, if we are reading between the two events, we are actually learning the lessons. And that enriches our life beyond the sphere of the normal, understanding. So as we go forward, sir, corporate is something that has always been part of you. Whether we talk about that you have worked as somebody who is a professional there, or somebody now who is approaching as a lecturer there, right? So as we live in this modernized world, what according to you will bring up the union of ancient wisdom and the modern living for a healthy lifestyle?
I have always maintained one thing is that our management studies, are very Western oriented. Look at the number of case studies that the IIMs and the management institutes, they're all Western.
Right.
There is so much ancient wisdom in our own country. And when our management graduates, they pass out from there, they've learned all the Western techniques. And at the end of it, they have to implement it on Indians, not the Western. And I think that's a huge dichotomy, which we have in mind. The way I look at it is that, modern times have modern problems, right? They all stem from the same source, that is man and his environment. Ancient wisdom, though ancient, has gone through many of these issues that you and I are facing today, be it strife, conflicts, love, passion, quest for something, victories and defeats. These are all the numerous gamut of emotions, that man faces, right from the time began, And there is so much to learn from this ancient wisdom, which is replete with all these kind of emotions and conflicts. I'll give a very simple example. In the beginning of Mahabharata, there is a verse. The verse is self-explanatory, which says, what is here is found everywhere. What is not here doesn't exist. Now look at the richness of the text, that if you have a problem, you can find an answer, or you can find an instance in that entire epic. That's the richness of an epic. Why not look at that for our modern issues? So just if that implies to just one epic, and if you just take Mahabharata, leave every other epic, you will see that often we are aware of an issue, the solution, the problem, everything there. Take the case of chapters like Yaksha Parva, in Mahabharata, which is nothing but a philosophical discourse between the Yaksha and Yudhishthir, or the Gita, for example, right in the middle of the war, or even the daily discourses undertaken by Bhishma from his bed of arrows, where every day during the war, Yudhishthir goes and Bhishma tells him a story and gives him lessons. So much is already there. You really don't need to look elsewhere. And it says that our world is modern, and in terms of technology, we are just modern in terms of technology, but our emotions, beliefs, it's still the same, and there's so much we can learn. I'll give another example. Mythology often gives us very interesting insight into our own selves. Forget about, anything else outside. Often it gives us insight into how we think. And I'll give a simple example. This is that all of us have what we call shifting moralities. Explain the shifting moralities. The hero in Ramayana was willing to sacrifice his throne for his brother, for his father and mother's commitment. The brother in return does not want to occupy the throne, despite the fact that it has officially now come to him. right? Both the brothers don't want to take the throne at all. Both are willing to sacrifice the throne for each other and for the sake of what they think is right. Contrast this with the heroes of Mahabharata, who go to war for the sake of a throne where both feel that the throne is rightfully ours. What is important in this is that both the epics live with us, with both the ideologies, and there is no conflict in our acceptance of both the epics. While we eulogize the sacrifice of one in one epic, we agree with the fact that in the other epic, they need justice. When the system was of no use, take law into your own hands and wage a war. So you see how and we have accepted both the epics like our own. We accept Ramayana and the sacrifice, we accept Mahabharata and say fight for justice. This shifting morality is there with all of us. And you just have to see that man by himself is quite complex in his way, how we look at these kind of things. Also remember, a villain for one could be a hero for another. For example, in Greek mythology, Prometheus, steals fire from gods and gives it to human beings. So for gods, he's a villain because he's taken something. But for human beings, he's a hero because he gave us the gift of fire. So you see, these kind of wisdom, when you look at it, you realize that it's not so simple. You just have to understand the complexity, and the ancient wisdom is giving it to us. We are not complaining. We are not saying, no, I only think sacrifice is right. No, we are also saying fight for your rights. Fight for your rights because you've been deprived of your rights. We are accepting both of them. Even in Ramayana, somebody has been deprived of his right. But we are accepting his sacrifice. We are accepting when Krishna tells the Pandavas that no, you should fight. We are accepting that also.
Absolutely.
This kind of complex understanding of humanity, where will you get except in mythology? And not just, as I said, I'm just giving you these examples because these are very common for our understanding. But look at the complexity. You don't have to go elsewhere. The wisdom is there in our stories.
Absolutely, sir. And see, from a long time, I have been into meditation, and I've realized the times that you're talking about, the time of the Rama and the time of the Krishna, they both happens to be part of your own brain. So the thoughts that are very conflicting, where you accept it because you love someone. The acceptance come very naturally, but at times you need to fight the negativity as well. So all these aspects are part of our own consciousness, and how we take up things forward. That's more important, because if you have a positive outlook towards life, then the multi-dimensionality of the consciousness becomes the wisdom aspect for you. There is nothing bad in this world. It's only from where we are looking at. So if we are looking at from the perspective of what we are, then probably, of course, it is going to be bad. But if we are looking from the perspective which is higher than this, like the universe, then it is again telling us that there is a lot of something that is hidden behind the event, which we are not able to perceive through our eyes. So do you want to add up on that something?
So, I always believe that, there's so much of wisdom in these kind of things, is that, yes, nobody is bad and nobody is good as such. In our own myth, we look at the way, I'll give a very simple, again, taking from what you just said, that take the case of Ravan, for example. We all know, we all love to hate him, right? He's a villain. So, but look at the character, look at the way the character has been shaped. He is a devotee of Lord Shiva. He's adept in music. He's a great musician. He's an able administrator, because in his country, nobody's unhappy. We say Sone ki Lanka. Quite clearly, the wealth is not in terms of the walls of gold, but people were happy out there. He ruled his country well, but he chose to kidnap somebody else's wife. He chose arrogance against humility, and he chose selfish motives against the loss of his own brothers and sons and many citizens of his country. So the negative is in the person. The person is not bad, but there are certain traits that we have, which is bad enough. And very clearly our epics explain one thing, that there are no moral or immoral characters. There are moral or immoral choices that you make. That's what makes you immoral, not the character. There's nobody. Otherwise, why would Ravan, be a devotee of Lord Shiva? And, he's done such great things. Also, remember, he's half a Brahmin, which means that there are times when Ram had to take his help. when he wanted to do a puja, there was nobody out there. He calls Ravan and Ravan goes and does it. See, these are moments which make you realize that whoever wrote this story must be having such an exclusive mindset, must be having such an open mindset of making a character like Ravan come and do a small, ritual for Ram when they are about to fight the next day. That's the beauty of our texts, which is really worth appreciating. And look at the diverse way of bringing these kind of characters.
And of course, sir, how we can build up our own character. Let's say if we talk about Ram is someone who is sacrificing his life, and on the other hand, he is fighting for his for the wife as well. So he has both the qualities. Normally, what people say, if you are naive, you are not able to fight it out. It doesn't mean that ways. If you are naive, it just means that you are giving you other person an opportunity to improve upon it. Doesn't mean that that you take it otherwise. So everything, the good qualities, the morals, the morals that we have as a life, they actually enrich us in holistic way. But how do we see these morals coming in terms when we look into the corporate life, where there is a cutthroat business, where there is a cutthroat competition as well, where we just have to get more and more into our pocket? How do we see such moral values getting incorporated in the senior leadership? Because that's the most important. If it is there in the senior leadership, it is of course going to percolate down to the mid-level management. And that is required if we need to progress with ethics. And in a country like India, where we are still developing in terms of technology, in terms of infrastructure, how do we see epic mythology coming in leadership role? And these people who are sitting onto the positions, they imbibe such qualities for the well-being of their own employees, because at the end of the day, it's not about business, it's about the living. And if we are living in terms of business, then we are losing our life. But if we are living in terms of living in an appropriate manner, we are actually making our life better for the future generation as well. So how do you see senior leadership incorporating such value system into their working styles?
As I said, I always see myths as storehouse of wisdom. They just not, as I said, for me, they're just not just stories. A lot of people think myths are nothing but stories. Chalo stories sunte hain and feel good. But that's not the way I look at it. One has to understand this from a perspective. For example, in myths, there are many conversations, many instances, which often kind of you can borrow it as real life issues, and not just Indian myths. I've given a lot of examples of Indian myths. See, we're living in a global world today. There are no borders. So what is a lesson for one is now lesson for a community. I would say lesson for mankind, for example. So I'll just give one example here. Often we realize, and talking about senior leadership and how they should react. Often we realize, that senior management is taking a decision and a manager doesn't stand by his own people because he's so busy saving his own job at times. What does a man do like that? And let me give you the same thing, which I think I took some time back. Take the story of Prometheus in Greek mythology. Prometheus is the one who shaped man. Okay, he shaped man, and when he shaped man, he really liked human beings. He liked their vulnerabilities. He realized also one thing, that human beings don't have certain qualities that his brother gave it to animals. Absolutely. So he and his brother were supposed to create man and human beings and animals, and his brother was in such a hurry so he gave all the good qualities to animals. So animals can run faster, some animals can swim, some animals can fly, some animals have a thick fur coat whereby they don't need to. And when it was turn for Prometheus to give something to human beings, he realized there was nothing left. So he realized to give something to man. And so he gave fire. But somehow God wasn't very comfortable with giving fire to human being. But God didn't say anything at that point of time. Thereafter, Prometheus tells man that you must offer sacrifice to the ultimate God, that is Zeus, because it was with his permission. But he also said that, and Zeus made a condition, that whatever human beings offer sacrifice, half will come to us and half will go to them. Prometheus was concerned with this because he realized that if animal sacrifice is made and if the main meat is given to God, then what will human beings eat? So what he did was he suggested human beings to make two offerings. The real meat which was there, okay, was covered with the skin of the animal, and the bones were covered with the fat. And he offered it to human beings, offered it to God. Obviously, God didn't understand that the skin, which looks dirty, actually had the meat underneath, and what seemed was fat had bones in it. So God took it, but now God has to stick to it. But God was angry. God felt slighted. God felt cheated. So what did God do? God took the fire away from human beings. When God took fire away from human beings, Prometheus realized that this is not done because my people are feeling cold. My people can't eat, my human beings can't eat raw meat. So what he did was, he stole fire from God. He went against the God. He went against the supreme authority called Zeus, for which he was punished. He was chained to the rocks, wherein the eagle would come every day and peck into his liver and leave. But he didn't give up. How many managers do we have today who are willing to fight with the senior management for the rights and the benefits of people reporting to them? And if you look at this, is a classic example that Prometheus was willing to be even punished for it, which he got, and it was a punishment for a very, very long period of time. That's what I think we have to understand, that there is so much for corporates to learn, that you stick to your stand. You take a stand and say, no, my people deserve this. Okay, there is a pandemic. Take a simple example. There's a pandemic, nobody's got a raise. Agree, nobody's got a raise. But then don't cut the salary at least. Don't give a raise this time. Now, how many people are willing to go with their management and say, we made enough money for the last 10 years. For the last 10 years, we've been making a lot of money. This time, because of the pandemic, there have been additional expenses. A lot of people would have lost relatives, would have been hospitalized, excessive expenditure. At least don't cut salary if you're not giving a raise. But will they stick their necks for it? Prometheus did. And Prometheus is not because, he's a god or something. It's a lesson for human beings saying, if you believe in an idea, stick to it. If it means fighting for your employees, go fight for it. Don't give up by saying, "Main kya karu, senior log maan nahi rahe hain." A very common example. But you see how how Prometheus sticks. I think that's a classic example of how you can learn of empowering your young leaders to talk what they think is true, what they think is necessary, what they think is to be done for their employees.
So it's not there in just private sector. It's there, of course, there in the public sector as well. Like both my parents are senior officers in government, departments, and we find the same kind of challenge. That's the reason that I could not join up the government services, because I found that if again we have to struggle for everything, then there is no point. And neither the juniors are listening nor the seniors are listening. And if you are somebody who intend to work for an organization and for the goodwill of from the departments, so probably there is a perspective that works for mid-level management, and of course a perspective that works for the senior leadership. But in both, there is one thing that is common, is a leadership. If we understand the responsibility as a leader, we probably understand the well-being of our employees, whether we talk about the mid-level management or the junior level management.
True. So, absolutely. There are so many examples of this. Yeah, absolutely.
So leadership role has to be well defined, and it has to come from within. It cannot be something that companies
cannot be taught.
Yeah.
It cannot be taught. I agree with you.
It cannot be taught. It has to come from within. And we of course feel that wellness holds a lot of importance here. If somebody who is sitting on a mid-level management is feeling physically and mentally fit and is taking care of their juniors, probably he'll be able to perform better and he'll be able to speak out his mind. If he doesn't have that much of internal will to speak up, probably he'll give many excuses to cut short that particular explanation. So wellness holds a lot of importance, and wellness percolates down from the high level management to the low level management. So it has a very intricate kind of association with each other. Whether we talk about the wisdom, whether we talk about the moral values, or we talk about the internal will to fight for our own rights. So, sir, as we are closing up our live and we are almost near, and it is such a pleasure to hear your words that are coming directly from the heart, because I'm feeling it in my bones. What exactly would be something that you want to convey to our audience?
Oh, well, I think I have a very simple way of looking at it, that all of us are aware, that death is imminent, right? No matter what you do. I know it sounds kind of sad, but that's a fact. But then we don't stop living. Death is imminent. We all know all of us are going to end in the grave. But then, we don't stop living. We take medicines. We exercise. When we are sick, we take medicines. When we are, want to make sure that my life goes on well, we exercise. We look on either sides before we cross the road, right? And so on and so forth. The pandemic has taught us one thing, that though death is imminent, man must make efforts to keep it away. A losing battle can be won. I mean, I give the classic example of, if the cause is correct. Take the case of Mahajan. It was back to unequal armies. The Pandav army was very, very small compared to the Kaurav army. But their cause was right and they were fighting for good. Here, it's the same thing. The pandemic is far from over. Let's not challenge nature beyond a point. Our medical infrastructure is fragile. Our medical fraternity is tired. Let's not tax them any further. Let us continue to maintain what I call COVID appropriate behavior. Only then, and again I go back to mythology, will David ever win over Goliath? Even if Goliath seems to be winning at the moment, let me add that. And finally, I will just say that mythology is not just a set of stories. There is much more. Mythology doesn't need to be just heard. Mythology needs to be studied. It's important for all of us to dive deep into the recesses of these beautiful stories and tales of the ancient past. And trust me, you will find wealth hitherto unknown. You might not have known about it, but there is wealth in every myth, not just any particular culture. I'm talking about myths from across the world. Listen to them, understand them, dive deep into it, see, and there is so much of wealth. Get it. Let the stories not go to waste. That's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, sir, for the enriching talks that we had today. And of course, I believe that our viewers have got a lot of insight into what mythology is, and now it is bringing the wisdom. If you dive within, explore it, and get the essence out of it. Just before we end up this live session, I want to just speak about the Ennobler Private Limited. We are the company from past 1 decade that we have been working as a business coach. We have also been giving up trainings in emotional intelligence to the corporate employees. I am particularly working in the corporate wellness and looking forward that corporate wellness become part of the every Indian company. It should not just be the part of the MNCs, but it should be part of every Indian company, so that we consider every employee as a human being, not as a resource. So we have also been coaching more than 1,000 senior leadership throughout the world, and it is this year that we have come up with a unique idea of Win the Mind Battle. It's a mental gym kind of a thing, which will help people train their mind and of course learn how to be willful in times or when the challenges come across their lives. So thank you everyone. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us. We'll take your leave.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Take care. Stay safe, stay happy. Okay.